Good morning. Welcome you to the ESSA Accountability System Steering Committee meeting for January. And I don't know if that's me buzzing or what. All right. Okay, maybe okay, I think we're ready now. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for committee members for being here this morning on a very, very cold January day. But I know we've got a lot of great information to talk about this morning. As we get started, I do need to ask, are there any questions about our last meeting in October of the minutes? If not, then we need a motion to approve.
I have one thing on the minutes.
Okay.
I replaced Kelly Gill, who's listed as absent,
Okay.
so she probably should not be listed as absent.
Okay. All right. Tiffany, did you catch that? Okay. Any other corrections? Okay. Need a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the Wednesday, October 24th, 2018 minutes as written with the necessary correction.
A second.
Okay. Second. Motion to approve and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved. Our first item is our update on the peer review for CTS Fire from Ms. Hope Worsham. Good morning.
Good morning, committee members. Hope Worsham, Director of Assessment for the State of Arkansas. So I'm going to give you an update on where we are with peer review. Currently, as we speak right now, there are 90 educators at the Embassy Suites in West Little Rock that are working on the peer review alignment study for the CTS Fire assessment. We started that process yesterday. It went very, very well. The teams came together. There's teams of 6 at each grade level or grade band, depending on the subject, looking at ELA, math, and science. They started with the standards, and then they looked at the performance level descriptors that are given by ACT that says this is what should be on a student should be able to do to show that they're ready or in need of support or exceeding. And then today, some of the groups have gotten into the tests themselves. So they'll actually look at the tests themselves, and they'll look at the questions that are on the assessment, and they will make determinations about if those questions actually do line up with our Arkansas state standards and to what degree they line up. They'll be doing that as well as looking at cognitive complexity, which is a piece that we need to submit to peer review for the federal government to approve our assessment. So where we are right now, they're looking at that test. They're going to determine those degrees to which the questions align and the depth of knowledge. And then ACS is the third-party group that we have hired to actually do this study. Arkansas is not doing it. ACT is not doing it. For peer review, they want a third party, and so that is ACS. ADE was instrumental in finding the educators, so we recruited educators from across the state. There was an application process. We had several hundred applications, and we had to narrow down to 90, and so we were able to get a very good representation from across the state, from across our districts. We have some STEM center specialists that are there, some co-op specialists as well. So I wanted to show you the districts that are represented. The ELA panelists come from these districts. In most cases, we have one person per district. There were a few cases where we did, because of limited availability and people at the right grade levels, we did have to choose maybe more than one person at the district. There's your math panelist. With ELA, we had to have more because ELA is one, there's 6 per grade, whereas math and science, we have 6 per grade band, per 2 grades. So it's a 3rd, 4th grade group, a 5th, 6th grade group. So that's our math panelist, and then our science panelists come from those districts. So very good spread. So far, the work has been very difficult. They had, at 4 o'clock yesterday, we're very ready to get out of there and go have a break. But the panelists have all been very involved, very cooperative, and really have appreciated being a part of the work. That we've talked a lot about what they can go back and share and what they can't. And one of the biggest things that they can go back and share once it comes out is the report that's going to come out from ACS. So ACS will take all of the information that the panelists have put together, and they will provide us with a report that will go before our Technical Advisory Committee in March. Along with that report, I will take to the Technical Advisory Committee our draft submission to the federal government, and we will make sure that those two things are aligning so that the TAC can provide input about, you know, if those are lining up with the theory of action for Arkansas and if we're accurately representing what we want the federal government to know about our assessment. In late spring, that report will be published for the public, and that's the piece that we're telling our panelists today. We really want you to take this report back to your buildings and really share that with all your buildings and share about the process. They cannot talk about the test items themselves. They can't go say this standard is on the test, this one's not, but they can go talk about the full process. And many of them spoke yesterday about what they went through yesterday with lining up the standards to the depth of knowledge. They really felt that was very powerful, and they wanted to go back and do some of that work with their teachers, and we thought that was great because that's really good work that helps them understand their standards better and walking through that process. In June, we will resubmit to the federal government. As of today, we have received a letter from the federal government saying that we substantially meet the requirements to use CTS Fire, but this peer review is the alignment study is one last piece that they requested from us. So hopefully that we will resubmit in June, and by about December time, we should know next year if that has fully met the requirements, which would mean that we can continue to use CTS Fire as we have planned.
Okay.
That is just the update of where we are on CTS Fire and the alignment study.
Let me add to that, Debbie Kaufman, Public School Accountability. If you come back to our ESSA, our approved ESSA plan, if you remember in the very early sections of that, one of our requirements that we have in our contract with U.S. Department of Ed is that we have rigorous academic standards and assessments. And what Hope has described is one of the steps that all states had to go through, depending on who their testing vendor was. This is just standard process for assessments. It's a little different for us because of which assessment we're using. It's more isolated to Arkansas at this time, but every assessment went through some kind of review process to be approved under ESSA plans. So following our plan.
Okay. Questions?
I'm just curious. So after the report is done, is this something that your third-party company, ACS, would take back to CTS Fire? Just wondering if they use that information to update any of their...
Yeah, that's a great question. So ACT, the report will be shared with ACT, and they kind of walk through this whole step-by-step with us. So yes, it will be shared with them. And if the panelists find that there are major holes in alignment, that is something where we would talk with ACT about augmenting the test. So if we find there are major gaps and it's something that we feel is important to be assessed, then we will talk with them about how can we get those types of items on the test. So we will use it in that way as well.
Any other questions?
She answered my question. I was just wondering if the information would be shared, and
Yes.
you did answer that question.
Yep, and it will be shared with the public at large, so it'll be something that we push out quite heavily to our districts so that they get more information. I know that's one question we always have is about alignment in the test, and so the report will be publicly available as well.
Is the ACS going to use just what this 90 educators decide, or are they going to do some other investigations on their own?
So they will use just what the educators decide because
Okay.
we felt like it was most important for our educators to say, in the state of Arkansas,
Right.
with what we're teaching,
Okay.
this is what our students can do.
Okay, all right. And then you mentioned that you had 6 per grade in ELA and 6 per grade band in math. What about science?
Same for science, 6 per grade band.
6
So
per
they're
grade band.
3, 4, 5, 6,
Okay.
7, 8 in high school.
Okay. All right.
You mentioned that we would be sharing our information, ACT may make adjustments. How often will this be done if ACT, because they may continue to make changes?
Yep, so the alignment study is something that we won't redo unless we change assessments again. So this is something that we would do for the duration of this assessment. If we find that there are places that changes need to be made, that's something we would talk very closely with ACT about. They would not make changes to the assessment that are that drastic based on our alignment study without discussing that thoroughly with us. So if that is something that, if it's something that we find there is a major hole, that would be an augmentation, which would then essentially make us Fire Arkansas specific because they wouldn't make that change globally.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Hope.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, whenever you ask questions, be sure you get that microphone right in front of you to speak. All right, we're gonna move on to the Perkins 5 grant, Dr. Angela Kremers. Good morning.
I'm
Welcome.
not Dr. Kramers.
Okay.
My name is Maria Swicegood. I work for the Department of Career Ed over the accountability and funding. And she's at the session, so I
Yes.
apologize. So I'm just going to spend just a few minutes of your time trying to explain. We're now getting ready to embark on what you have done in the past on to reauthorize Perkins 5. It was reauthorized and signed into law on July 31st. And there will be some provisions, or this 1920 year will be our transition year. We may have a few transitions, but more than likely we'll go full force in 2021, full implementation. And these are just some things. 2006 is when Perkins 4 began, and there's been quite a few changes in technology, occupations, and populations since then. So we've headed down a new path with technology. So 2018, it was time to reauthorize, and we had been waiting anxiously. So we will do just like with ESSA. We will write a 4-year plan. We will have those performance targets, and we hope to include this committee in some of your thoughts that you've had from being on this committee, and what was good, what was bad, what do we need to do differently, and some things hopefully that you can share with us. We would like to do that because we want to make sure that all students, pretty much we're all together on one page. So we will put together our 4-year plan. We have until April, at the end of April 1920 to submit that, April of 20. And then the Department of Ed will have 120 days to respond back for any changes and things, just like the process that you had with ESSA. Ours is just a little bit smaller. We did attend a regional meeting in Atlanta. Advanced CTE, Career and Technical Education, had some work groups where we could go. We had representation from the Department of Career Ed. We had there in the middle with the sign, that is our partner, Monisa West from the Department of Higher Ed. Perkins also goes to 2-year colleges on the higher ed side. Dr. Childers there on the right. In the back, we have Mr. Mike Mertens from AAEA was on our team, and Suzanne Jones is there next to him, who was our Department of Education representative. So we went as, this is our core team, and then we'll branch out from here for other stakeholders with the meetings around the state to have the progression of the state plan. In Perkins 4, the CTE concentrator was able to be defined by the states. They put into the law their definition. They want to have a standard definition. So it would be, currently we have in our plan that a student would complete at least 3 courses in a single program area or program of study. That is what we use at this time to declare them a concentrator. There's a difference between a concentrator and completer that we've had to clear up, but that will be another call. We would like for it to stay at 3 so that they have this progression when I talk about the programs of study. So that transition and the law has been out for public review, and it was completed 3 weeks ago, but since the government shut down, we're not sure, so we're kind of holding on to see if there were going to be any of those changes in the law made where we had the comment period. And also on the transition plan, there were several things that were added or looked at and commented on. So we're waiting anxiously to get those suggestions or changes back. Our program of study, our recipients or subrecipients for this federal grant all have to have one program of study as the subrecipient. And with that, the program of study is a non-duplicative sequence, and I always use accounting, like accounting 1, accounting 2, as a non-duplicative sequence. They have a chance for post-secondary credit, which we have so many schools that have the post-secondary credit. into higher ed, so that non-duplicative. So if we did take accounting 1 and 2, they would go straight into college to that next level. Incorporates challenging state academic standards, and I'll discuss those in a few minutes. Knowledge and skills, including those employability skills, which with ESSA and Perkins, they've tried to align those as well to where academic and career tech skills are side by side. And it is aligned with the needs of the industries. So you will see when we get to our needs assessment that they will be heavily involved in all of the sub-recipient areas. And then it progresses in specificity. So it's not going to be, they had talked about in the rewrite of the bill that would maybe be an exploration in different areas, but they stayed with the non-duplicative sequence and its specificity. So like the accounting 1, accounting 2, go on to that business accounting major. And then it will have multiple entry and exit points. So let's say that you get a CNA in high school and you get out, you get a job, but you want to go to the RN. So there's going to be different exit points and entry points along the way, but you'll be able to work your way up. So you'll be able to work, go to your next degree, maybe go up to the RN, get back on the highway and further your education. So that's what we would like to have, is for our students to be able to have extra entry and exit points. And also would culminate with the attainment of a recognized industry. This says post-secondary, but that can be an industry credential. They have post-secondary excuse me, my mouth's dry, but the post-secondary credential is not just necessarily post-secondary. It could be a welding certificate, it could be NCCR, a AWS for welding, a parapro for education, and all the different credentials that we're currently using now for our accountability for program areas. So this is what we have to do for our transition plan. We have a 60-day public comment and review once we do get that with our stakeholder involvement areas. We want to, the original law was built on special populations. It's being moved back to really enhance special populations. So we will be drilling down not just to the top level, but to all of those subpopulations to make sure that we all have equal access to career and technical education. It has expanded to include homeless individuals, youth with active military parents, that we have pieces in the law that align with ESSA and pieces in the law that align with DWS's WIOA. So we have some verbiage that follows ESSA and then verbiage that follows WIOA. Questions? Okay. And then they will be required to do a local needs assessment, and these are the things that must be included. Student performance, and that would be ELA, science and math. Program quality, which we talked about the industry credentials. Labor market needs, so they're going to have to search to see, is that program of study what we need? Is that what our students need to help them to succeed in the marketplace? Educator development, and then the special population access. They must update it every 2 years, and the funding must be aligned. So unless it's in that plan, none of the funds will be able to be used towards those programs of study. So everything must align to that local need that you've submitted. So these are the ones that are the special populations. We've had the top 3 in our current Perkins that we report on, and the bottom 3 are the new ones that are being added. And these are our secondary indicators. We had 9. We've knocked them down. We had literacy and math, but now they've added the 3rd, science, to align with ESSA. Our program quality was technical skill attainment. They've reworded that, and that is where the credentials, the post-secondary hours, or there's a piece with work-based learning is included. Graduation rate, placement after 2 quarters. Are they in school? Are they in school for the program for which they finished high school? Are they working? Are they in military? Are they unemployed? And then we have the non-traditional concentrator, which would be my easy example is a woman in ag. So if it's pretty much a male-dominated field, and it's anything that's 25% or less would be considered non-traditional. So females in the act, we would want to see more women, more males in education, just those non-trad occupations that we can try to explore and give students those different ideas for employment. Post-secondary, for Monisa on the 2-year level, she has to go through placement just like we do. There may be a few that are different because of what WIOA with the Department of Workforce, the attainment of a credential or degree, and then they have the same, did they go into a non-traditional field. And that is our information if you need anything, if you have any questions.
Questions over here?
I just have one question.
Okay.
Just really quickly, explain concentrator and completer, because
Okay.
I've heard completer.
Yes,
But I
and
haven't-
now the completion is the completion from high school to college with that seamless in specificity. In Arkansas, I think in probably around 2008 or 9, there was a law drafted that we as Arkansas, if a student, they said completes a program of study, but it's really not completed till they've reached that level at post-secondary. So we were required to give them a certificate or some type of acknowledgement that they did complete it on the high school level. So the verbiage that a lot of the teachers and public will say will be completers. And that may have not been in specificity as a true program of study, but they may have only had an area and took a class in another program area, but they were considered a completer. But as far as what I have to send to the feds, they would be a concentrator only if they stayed within that program of study. So it was a little bit, I guess the definition for the completer for high school was a little bit different than what we reported to the federal government. So you might say, well, I was a completer in that, but that may not be, it may even be another area that I would send up you as being a concentrator for another area. So thank you. That's been a discussion, and we're working to get that changed. So thank you for that.
Ms. Flowers, you have a question?
Under local needs assessment,
Yes, ma'am.
must include review of educator development. Will you explain that?
That is that our funds need to go for those teachers to know what needs to be taught. We've had regional advisory meetings all over the state. Employers say that students need work skills. They need those soft skills for work. So we want to have, we will be heavily into professional development for those CTE educators to bring in that science, math, and English, as well as those soft skills. So we want our teachers prepared to teach that well-rounded student. And so it's, the law really emphasizes money for those teachers to have professional development. Thank you.
Mr. Bennett, you have a question? Linda, you have a question? No? I did have a question. One of the things that I think made our ESSA plan just really fit Arkansas and what our students needed is that on the front end, our department worked really, really hard at making sure we had stakeholder input, knowing what our students actually needed. And tell me a little bit about your stakeholder input.
Well, we've got a list of about 40 different areas in the law that's included of who, from legislators to business partners to parents to students.
I guess I'm more interested on the how are you getting that input?
How or, oh,
Yes.
well, that hasn't been, the whole plan has not been built in.
Sure.
We have worked with ADE to piggyback off, say, this committee, and not to reduplicate. So if we can come to you and get those ideas. We're also going to the local workforce boards. We also have, like I said, the regional advisories through the cooperatives. We have career and technical coordinators there, and they bring in business and industry once a year and bring in the teachers, and we discuss what the students need to have and to succeed and what they need as a worker. And from that, we've had some different things added to our curriculum because of the input from the business and industry. And so we do have a list. We have not put that together yet, but there's around 40 different entities. But we hope to include like groups like this that can share with us that maybe how you did it differently or some other things. But so down to the tribal tribes and it's to students. We've got a whole list, like I said, of about 40. We have not put that together yet. We're waiting on everything from the comment period before we start to really put that together, because once we put it together, we're ready to hit it and to have those discussions. So I
just don't want you to underestimate in any way the value of the stakeholder input to making sure that you get a good plan that fits the students and of Arkansas. I did have another question. Okay. And it was kind of along the lines of ESSA. One of the things that you talked about was the students, the culminating with a post-secondary credential. And that's one of the things that we've talked about as far as maybe a potential indicator with our ESSA plan. How are you gathering the data on the credentials that a student might get in high school, and then plus you talked about being able to collect data after they get out of high school, post-secondary. So how are you getting that data?
Right now, it's self-reported by the schools.
Okay.
We pay for a lot of those industry credentials, and so they have to submit that to us. We've also been working with the entities that have those credentials, the companies like Microsoft or Adobe, in getting that information from them. That's some work still to be done. But as of right now, it is through self-reported from the school districts and the CTE coordinators with the pass-fail rate. So that, as of right now, we're working, like I said, to get that true list of pass and fail from the entities itself that gives those assessments or credentialing. And so, yeah, right now it's self-reported.
Okay, I could see that as a way that these two programs could really align with one another.
Yes, and we've discussed how that is hopefully, like you said, it may be an additional as in the value of the point system as the attainment of a credential, and maybe even we had discussed about completer, which now will be concentrators. So we've worked really. ADE's been wonderful to give us any ideas and feedback of anything we've asked, so we've been very blessed to have them as a partner. Okay. And we hope to have it all as one. We don't want to do any duplicative. That's why we're trying to work off of what you've done and other, like the WIOA with workforce services. We don't want to bring the same people in to meet for the same thing 10 times. We want to have, let's all get together, let's talk about the same thing at once. And your time is precious, you know, and we need to have a collaborative effort for all those stakeholders and not duplicate it.
Right, and I encourage you to use the team members here at the ADE. They've been through the process,
yes,
and they are really good at what they do.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other questions or comments along this line, Ms. Kaufman?
I'll give you a quick update on the data. We've recently received the file on concentrators, and so we are starting the modeling process. And if Dr. Rolla is here, if you need questions, detailed questions, I can give you the high level. As you recall, our stakeholders did say that they wanted us to consider the concentrators in our SQSS, just like we did students that took AP, IB, other concurrent credit, everything that students are doing above and beyond minimal requirements. We were looking at ways to recognize that in our school quality and student success indicator. So we now have the beginning of data. We're modeling it to check for accuracy and impact, and so as that work is being done, it's not started yet, we're right in the middle of trying to put the report card together. So as soon as Dr. Rolla's team can start in on that, then we'll come back with reports letting you know how the data are looking.
Okay, does that data come from a cycle report, or is that something from career ed? I mean, how does that come from? Sorry.
Just got into the details.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So right now, the data are coming out of Triand from a
Okay.
report that's actually developed in Triand.
Okay.
So some of the questions that we'll have to consider and think about, and it has implications for cycle submission, et cetera, is right now within ESSA, there are some things that come out of Triand on a specific date that schools are notified about. Make sure all your data are correct at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's specifically like for testing and enrollment for percent tested. In the case of the completers, if it's going to continue to come out of Triand, then a determination would have to be made whether we do the same thing, we set a date, schools make sure you have all your information up to date, or we look at whether or not it needs to become something that can be retrieved in a cycle submission.
Okay.
And along one of those cycles.
That,
So-
I guess that was kind of my question, was how reliable was the data that we're actually getting? So,
This is the first year, so some of the questions I asked upon being provided with access to the reports was who's represented in it and can we get prior years? And what we have right now is 2019. It reflects the information right now on students who are grade 9 students in the 2018-19 school year. So we won't know what that data will look like at the end of the year, the number of students, how the numbers will change by the end of the year. So one of the things we'll have to think about is if we are going to pull it from Triand, what is the optimal date to pull it so that it can be brought together with certified cycle data, most likely cycle 7, and then we can start modeling it. So right now what we can do with it once we finish report card data is we would be able to look at what are the frequencies and interact with folks at Career Ed to say, are these the kinds of frequencies that you're seeing? And just get a sense of whether or not what is being captured is reflective of what's expected. And that usually generates a lot of follow-up questions and back and forth that help us to understand the level of data quality we're getting out of there and then how to improve it from there before it's actually used.
all right. Yeah. But it's exciting to think that we're moving that direction.
I
Yeah,
know.
I know it's sometimes slower than what we like, but
It
we're
is.
starting. We're
It
going.
is. It
Good.
really is. It's
Yeah.
the first time we've really gotten our hands on something that's in
Uh-huh.
our interested in and will model
Yeah.
for future use. So
Yeah.
it's really a fun spot to be in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
To add to what Dr. Rolla is saying is, but this is what our stakeholders
Yes.
want. They want us to study the data and bring that report to them to make a really wise, data-driven decision.
Yes. Yes.
And so we can say we want things in our accountability system, but let's test them to see what the results really would be. And so, you know, I can express my opinion of what I want in accountability, but until you really have data to make a really data-driven decision, you're just expressing an opinion. And so that's the beauty of what is now happening is our stakeholders said they want us to consider this data, and we'll be able to run the data, come back and say, okay, stakeholders, this is what the data look like. Are you still all in on it? And then if they say yes, then we can put that into our accountability system. But it's really making the data cycle work like we ask schools to do and districts to do. We're able to do it at the state level.
Yeah.
So very exciting.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that thrills me about the ESSA process, and hopefully the Perkins 5 is that this is a living document that it changes and it updates and it gets better and better. And so I hope that you know you're learning by example of some great people in here.
Well, I just wanted to say, what we currently do is we do receive all a cycle report from ADE with all of our CTE data, and then we manipulate it to find our concentrators in all areas and with all of that data, and then return it to them to upload to EdFax. So it's been a wonderful partnership, but they've gone that extra mile to add it to Triand, to where the stakeholders, the students, the parents can see it for real time as well. So we appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank
good,
you.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to get a report from Ms. Kaufman on the amendment requests that we talked about last time.
So, we've talked about the amendment request quite a bit about, we wanted to update our long-term goals. It is a report. It doesn't change anything in accountability, but it is one of the reports that we will have on our report card. We did submit that amendment request on January 8th. We didn't hear anything for a few days, so we got a little nervous with the shutdown, so we made some phone calls, and we did get an email back stating that the amendment request had been received, and they could not give us a timeline of when it would be reviewed or when our feedback would come back. So we're in a holding pattern on long-range goals until such time that we hear back from them. We are preparing our reports to go either way, to follow what's currently in our plan and report that, or to report what we've requested with the new timelines for English language arts, math, and English learners. So we're just waiting.
Okay.
So, all right. As we get started going through here for the rest of this session, I wanted to kind of introduce to you some of our team members who are leading some of the work that goes into our accountability system. Often you don't see them because they're busy at work, so today I've asked them to come over and speak briefly about the work that we do. To give you an update, we are in the process of pulling all of our data together to put out the 2018 report card. That report card is required by Arkansas law to have it out by April 15th. We will definitely meet that deadline. We try to get it out earlier. But what we're doing right now is not only meeting all of the new requirements under ESSA that have to be reported, but we're working to also bring in the state requirements. And those have been in separate places on our website, and we're trying to put it all into one. So My School Info was originally built with an idea to let schools go in and analyze information that they desired to know. But it was so wonderful that we posted our ESSA School Index there and our quick accountability at a glance, and our report card just naturally started going there and putting information in. But we had federal reporting in one place and state reporting in another place, and so we are working very hard to put that all together. It may not be as pretty this year as we would like to be, but the beauty is that for our stakeholders, it'll be a one spot to go to, and it will be very comprehensive. Then we'll work on, over time, getting it to be prettier and more user-friendly, so we'll appreciate feedback from everyone. So I'm going to ask Louis Farron to come up. And Louis is our Director of Data Quality, and he works in helping us to help the public understand our data.
We placed the 2019 business rules for calculating the ESSA Skill Index scores on the ADE website, the informational documents, on January 9th. We had also posted a commissioner's memo the same day with a link to the document and a PDF. On December 4th, we had posted a commissioner's memo asking for public comments with a copy of the draft business rules. We update the business rules every year based on stakeholder input. If we get calls or emails asking about the business rules, we try to make the business rules as easily understandable as possible and try to elaborate more on areas that may not be as clear. So we update those every year.
Okay.
Any questions?
Questions? Mr. Farron, were there major changes this year in the business rules?
The largest change this year was the dynamic learning maps assessment, because it replaced the MSAA assessment. That's the assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities.
Okay,
So we had changes for that. Ma'am.
okay. And then how long is the public comment period going to last?
Well, it was a couple of weeks. It was December 4th.
So you're already
yes,
done
it
with the
was-
public
it's
comment
over.
period? Okay, all right. Anyone else have a question? Thank you for your hard work. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Ms. Newton, I have to really brag on our school districts. Lewis's team called every school during graduation rate corrections that had things that we needed to discuss with them. And in our conversations with them, every school district had their business rules in their hand. And we had the business rules in our hand as we worked together to help them understand maybe where there had been a coding error or something was not documented appropriately. When everything is documented accurately in eSchool and Try-In, then our systems pull it correctly. And when things are not, then it shifts it out to go through some kind of a review process. And that's what it's supposed to do. So if it doesn't meet all of the requirements, it's going to be kicked out as, you need to go in and lay some eyes on this and have some conversations. So the more we have those conversations and the more our school districts are utilizing those business rules, we're just getting better data quality. And that is advantageous for our school districts, for our state, for our stakeholders across the state.
Yes.
So it's been really great work.
And I know districts appreciate the transparency of it, that they have something concrete that they can put in their hands and say, you know, if I make these changes, you know, what's going to happen to what we're doing for students. So I'm sure that it's very appreciative of that.
I think the other thing that is really exciting is the different conversations we've had with school leaders that call and say, oh, I'm like a point or 2 points or 3 points away from a letter grade. And at first they think, oh, well, we'll just make this little tweak and we'll earn those points. And after they kind of work through their data, they've read through those business rules, they all come back to that same conclusion. Oh, wait a minute. If we really get in there and help kids learn,
Yes.
achievement will grow up, growth will increase,
Yes.
and the letter grade will take care of itself.
That's it.
And so we're just hearing more and more of those stories of while you can go into SQSS and really make a difference for kids, if you really want to make a difference in your overall score, kids need to be
Right.
on grade level.
Yes. Good.
All right, so in ESSA, if you recall, we are required to provide support to our schools that are most in need of support, and those are identified. We begin to work with them and offer the opportunity for 1003 grants. And so we've hired a new director, Dr. Jenny Stroud, and I'll ask her to come up and talk briefly about our 1003 applications.
Welcome, Dr. Stroud.
Good morning. I would like to introduce my partner, if I may
Okay.
do that. Dr. Robert Toney and I work together on these applications.
Okay.
Dr. Robert Toney?
Good morning.
I shared with you the theory of action. I must say I came on board in December for this grant, but I shared this slide with the theory of action because we are supporting the districts with their school improvement plans. So we're currently reading those applications sent to us, and we're approving them now. In fact, we're making phone calls to say, please send them. We're ready. So we're walking beside the district to support them with their school improvement plans and this funding. We fall under Title I, but we're a small segment under Title I. Correct me, please. 1003A, we're just 1003. So
Okay.
you may have read it in another way.
Okay. Questions? How long is the application process, and when will schools find out their amounts? or
So they
approval?
know their amount.
Okay,
The application is open, and that was done on purpose as far as a deadline, so
Okay.
that they could truly dig in to the
Okay.
school improvement plan and create a plan that's not just for this year, but that they could look beyond, perhaps. So that deadline has been open. Of course, we follow the guidelines for federal money.
so you think by the end of the school year, that process would be completed then?
For this particular application, this year, yes.
Okay.
We do.
All right.
So the 1003 applications this year are for planning grants. And we've talked about this a little bit before, but we've asked our schools to, now that they have 2 years of ESSA school index data, to go back into their school improvement plans and ensure that those plans are aligning with what their data are saying about the school so that they can prioritize their needs. And before you jump out and buy something, let's make sure that the educators are ready and that they have the skills they need once purchases are made. So the 1003 follows most of the guidelines of Title I, whether or not on the expenditures that they can utilize, but it must include evidence-based practices. They have to have at least one evidence-based practice. So the planning grant allows them to spend a little time really studying. Some of them will go to conferences, they'll attend institutes, they'll get professional development this year, mostly this summer, in preparation for the direction that they'll want to go in the future.
Okay, so how much support or is the department giving in the application process? Or is that completely letting the school districts look at their improvement plans, or?
So we're willing to sit down beside them. We have said we'll come to you. We so far have just been on the phone, and in October, November, December, Dr. Tony was in this office before me, and he went out to the districts and shared the application and what to do and how to do it. So now they're just starting to roll in, and again, we've just had a few roll in complete. So we're making phone calls saying, what can we do for you? How can we help you? And we're willing to come to your group and work with you. So we're willing to sit right beside them and help them.
Yeah, I know sometimes when you're having difficulties anyway, and then to look at the problem and find out, well, this is the problem, but sometimes it's so overwhelming you don't know where to start. And so sometimes that extra support is greatly appreciated.
Yes.
All right.
So when we imagined our ESSA plan and we imagined Act 930 in 2017, we imagined support looking differently. And I think what Dr. Stroud has just described is this is what support looks like. We're not worried about a timeline that's squeezing the school district to make rash decisions. We're saying, let's make thoughtful decisions. If you need us, we're right here. We'll come to you. So this is what support looks like in our new vision.
Okay, good. Any questions, comments? Okay, thank you. You ready for the ESSA advisory groups?
Our
ahead.
ESSA advisory groups have not been a meeting and updating, except English learners will have a report for you today. We've been tossing around the idea because our schools have a great need. Our data is saying that we have a great need to better serve our students with special needs. So I did talk to Stacy Smith in Learning Services about an advisory group for special ed. At this time, special ed already has a lot of identified groups, and so she thinks that one of those already identified groups will be a great advisory group for ESSA regarding special ed services. But that team is out doing monitoring visits, so they're very, very busy. I can't even talk to them. So as soon as they've completed their monitoring visits, we'll get back together. They have already been out in the field providing professional development for some of our schools that have been identified as having a really great need in serving special ed students. There are a couple of more days coming up next week that they're providing, and those have been by invitation only at this time because we need to get off to a very quick start with our 1003 applications and everything. So we will be planning much more in the future. So we'll have more to bring to you at that time.
You think-
But Tricia Kerr is here.
Okay. Welcome, Ms. Carr.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of the English Learners Title III Advisory Group, which Melissa Bratton is a part of. So she knows what we've been up to and things. Our most recent activity, we shared a lot of the items the group worked on back in October about the changes to the ESSA plan and some other items at the ESOL coordinators meeting that we have every year. We have an annual meeting tied to the ARC-TESOL, that's Arkansas Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages Conference. And we get feedback from ESOL coordinators there regularly as well to inform our work. Things we mentioned last time, we have now implemented the Title III Recent Immigrant Grant. There are 6 districts that just qualified to be added this year to that, so we're working with them to get them up and running. One thing I did is we're participating, ADE is, in a project with CCSSO, the Council of Chief State School Officers. We have so many acronyms, isn't it crazy? On building teacher capacity to serve English learners project. And one of the things they wanted on that is for us to complete what's called a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's something done often in the business world. So one thing I did is I reached out to the ESSA advisory group as well as other stakeholders and asked them for their input and their feedback. So it was very enlightening to have from them, and it's good to see what is working well and some areas that we can improve in. So in February, I'll be in Los Angeles at the SCAS, the meeting for the English learner, people like me from other agencies, and then our third day of meetings is this group here, and we'll be actually using that and getting professional development on, so you get this feedback, how do you move the action forward? So I look forward to continuing to bring this information back to the advisory group to keep things moving forward for English learners. One thing we're in the process of doing is surveying districts regarding the implementation of our entrance and exit procedures. We'll be surveying them in February to see what's working for them, what questions do they have, what suggestions do they have, because this is our first year of full implementation of the entrance and exit procedures that are part of the ESSA plan. One of the biggest questions will be about the exit criteria being the score proficient on ELPA 21 and then the 2 additional data points from the professional judgment rubric. Overall, it's gone pretty well moving to that. There are a few challenges, especially for high school kids, especially when we get foreign exchange students or students directly from another country at a high school level who come in proficient. It's hard to find those 2 other data points. So we'll be discussing what are some things we can do. And related to that, we just received updated guidance from the Department of Ed on the entrance and exit procedures. So we will be reviewing those with the advisory group in comparison to our existing entrance and exit procedures, just to make sure that we are where we're supposed to be, so that we're responding to the guidance we get from the Department of Ed, but also that we're responding to stakeholders in the state and doing the best thing for our English learners. We are in the process of developing a new Title III formula grant application that I will be asking this group to give us feedback on. Title III is the federal program to serve districts that have English learners. Right now we have 48 districts that qualify for that. We just added a district this last month that just qualified, a charter school that right now the name of it slips my mind, I'm sorry. But we're working with them to get them up and running. Our next meeting for the advisory group will be Friday, February 15th, and it's via Zoom. So I look forward to taking several of these items to them, especially the entrance and exit procedures. That's our main topic. Just trying to keep the work moving forward and always reaching out to the stakeholder group that we have to get feedback on what we're doing. So, do you have any questions?
Questions?
This specifically, the surveying in February, is that going to be hard, or is that in person? Surveying over the phone?
It's going to be a
online?
Google form,
Google form.
Google survey.
And
I already have it drafted, but I wanted to run it by a few more people to make sure the questions made sense. So that may be part of what we're doing at the Zoom meeting, making sure that those because if the people in that advisory group can understand the questions, then it's okay. But if you can't understand the questions, it's not okay. I think it's
Yeah.
ready to go, but it'll be a Google form.
Okay. And then as you're developing the new Title III grant application, the process of training and professional and support, I guess, is my question, where that lies, and what the process looks for that.
Okay, Alan Lytle and our intent is, we did this with the recipients of the recent immigrant grant when we did the new grant application. We will have, at a minimum, a statewide webinar where we go over the grant application, the elements in it, but we are also looking at some other forms of training that we need to do with Title III districts, because there are certain federal expectations of what can and should be happening with the Title III project, and there are resources out there that can help us train our Title III staff in what those elements look like, but it hasn't consistently gotten out to everybody. And so a couple of things we're working on besides the webinar about the new application, updating the Title III webpage on ADE's site with these various resources, and then we're considering a face-to-face training for Title III directors. That kind of answer your question?
It does, thank you. And y'all been doing an amazing job just getting that, and I just want to share that here in public. It's been great and supportive, and we feel that district, and as a district, and I hear from other districts. So, good
Well, always
job.
reach out to us, and we'll do our best to find the answer if we don't know it.
Yeah.
So,
I've
Thank
also been impressed by the amount of stakeholder input that you seek out, and then not just seek out, but listen and try to implement what they're wanting. So, good job.
Well,
We
thank you.
appreciate your hard work.
Thank you. Makes it go a lot easier when you're working as a team.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that work shows off in the data.
Yes. Yeah.
Our English learners are certainly achieving, and while some states may have seen English learners as some of their lowest performing subgroups, they certainly were not in our lowest performing for our state. So there's probably things to learn,
Yeah.
to take over, to think about how we support other learners.
Right.
So,
Very good. Okay.
all right, so I was just struck by listening to everyone talk, and just reminded that many times people put all of their effort into developing a plan, but there is so much work that goes into the actual implementation of the plan. So lots of times you're so worn out from creating the plan that you forget now we're going to need twice that energy to implement. And so just hearing from our colleagues today, you just hear what's going on across the state, and how those feedback loops are built in continually in our plan to think about how we implement it effectively for our state. So part of that brings us to number 7. The number 7 item on our agenda is communication with communities. So it's critical that we do have those feedback loops built into our system, but one that's coming up that is very important to us, I mentioned briefly, is our report card. The report card, we're required to make our report card user-friendly for stakeholders. And so That's a subjective idea. What's user-friendly to one may not be user-friendly to another. So the best way that we're going to know is by getting out and talking to people. So Kim Wright is our Family and Community Engagement Director, and she's going to tell you where we are in designing our outreach program.
Good morning.
Good morning, and again, I'm Kim Wright. I'm the Director for Family and Community Engagement. And as Ms. Kaufman said, stakeholder communication is a priority for us. And in order to be able to communicate two-way back and forth, we have to make that data that we've been talking about this morning very user-friendly. And so one of the ways that we're doing that are the feedback loops. So once the report card has been released in April, after that, we're going to be holding sessions, so feedback loops, where we go out into the communities and talk to them, get them to look at the report card, get their feedback, what is easy to understand, what graph could look different, just different things like that, so that we can make those revisions in order for it to be more user-friendly for all of the public. And so we're currently creating that plan and that schedule of those. And again, we'll start sometime after the report card comes out in April, and those will just kind of continue as we continue to revise and get the feedback from the stakeholders.
Are you scheduling similar to what you did when you did the family and community engagement standards, some in the day and some at night, or are you thinking about those types of things?
Yes, ma'am. We're definitely going to do some during the daytime and some during the evening time, and we've also got some other options on the table that we're just trying to make it so that anyone that might be interested would have the opportunity to come and give us feedback.
Okay, good. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As you recall from our previous conversations, we reached out for assistance with how to do these focus groups and how to reach out. And we relied on our partnership with CCSSO and Battelle for Kids. If you remember, Battelle for Kids has been in to talk to us a little bit. They helped us conduct focus groups. Everything's last year for me, so I'm not even sure when it was. Not that far long ago. They conducted focus groups, and we got to go and observe. So they did all the work of writing the questions and putting the information out on social media to draw people in to the focus group. So I guess it was the beginning of summer. That's how far last year was. So we learned from that. And we relied on people that were expert in that field of conducting focus groups. So our team now, we had that plan initially that they would go out and guide us on how to do it. Then we would take that over and make that a part of our continuous improvement cycle. So we will do it this year. Next year we release report cards. We'll be back out doing the same thing. And that's the intention, is to continue to try to make it the best that it can be. Our report card is massive. We are a very transparent state. So we don't want to cut back on that. So the questions are not, which data do you want us to cut out? It's how do we provide the data that are available to you in a format that helps you to easily understand it, and to formulate the questions that you want to bring together in two-way communication with your school district and or community together. So we want to empower stakeholders to really understand schools so that they can be supportive in the right places.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we're down to the planning for the next meeting. I know you have a proposal.
I do. I would like to propose March 27th, which is again the last Wednesday of the month, from 9:30 to 11:30. And the reason we would like to propose this, it's really only 2 months away, but that puts us right into the timeline of the report card will be either already out for schools to look at in a private viewing format or about to be somewhere in there. We'll see where we are at that time. But this will be a good time for us to come together and talk about more in depth of our communication plan. And then hopefully we'll have some updates on our amendment. We'll know, maybe have something from them, and then whatever else is up, we'll have information from our peer review possibly.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion on that effect, or just accept that?
If there's anyone that has, if it sounds good to everyone, we can just,
Okay. Is that good with everyone? Yes. Okay. All right, I think we're good with that.
anything else that you would like to discuss at the next meeting?
I don't have anything right now, but if we do, we can maybe send it to you, email you. We can email you probably if something comes
Sure.
up.
Okay.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we adjourn? All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn to our next meeting.
All right,
March
all in favor,
27th.
say aye.
Aye.